I think it's time we rustle some jimmies. What's good, internet? JB back here today with a Pokemon Unite tier list. Today we're going to be taking a look at the state of Pokemon Unite post ceruledge release and post Scorching Waves patch. So what you're seeing on screen right now is where I had, all the Pokemon ranked in the May patch, which was, the Tyranitar Metagross round of buffs. So yeah, that's what this is, and I'm going to go through very quickly, and we're going to only really look at the stuff that got buffed in the Scorching Waves patch. We'll quickly go over everything else, but let me go ahead and get everything out. But that was easier said than done because I'm not smart, but here is everything else. Let's go over, we'll just go tier by tier and talk about whether or not I need to move anything up or down, starting with our S tier. Umbreon, I think it is still firmly an S tier choice. Still unbelievably tanky, great sustain. Both builds are great, good Unite move. It stays where it belongs. Blastoise, this is right after it got nerfed, I believe, and I was a little bit hesitant to move it down, and I think I'm willing to move it down to A tier. I still think it's one of the best defenders in the game very easily. I just don't know if it's quite worthy of S tier. You could talk me into it still being up there, but I think a couple of other defenders may have overtaken it. Other than that, I think it's still an incredibly good carry defender, just good Pokemon overall. Comfey, most broken character in the game. Next, Glaceon. You could talk me into this thing being moved down to A. I think I'm willing to listen to that argument. It's a very strong Pokemon and completely BS in the fact that it can just one-shot entire teams without having to aim. I think that's pretty stupid, but overall it's very squishy and very easily diveable, so I think you can get away with putting it in A tier. So I'll do that for now. And this is one of my hottest takes of all time, and I'm still not gonna back off of it. Ninetales is broken. I don't know why more people don't play this character. It's stupid. It has the most stuns in the game. Best just shut down dive Pokemon there is. Shut down all arounder Pokemon. You need something to combat your Tyranitars, your Phalanxes, your ceruledges, your blazikens, your Mimikyus. Ninetales is like a hard counter to everything that's good because it just stuns them and doesn't let them play the game. Ninetales is broken. Play Ninetales. It's genuinely one of the best Pokemon in the game. I cannot explain to you why more people do not play this Pokemon. Gyarados. Have you ever seen a Pokemon disappear from prominence faster than Gyarados? Because this character was top of the line busted during the May patch, and even before, right before ceruledge, ever since that one came out, ever since the NAIC, when people started realizing how good Phalanx is, you just haven't. I barely see this Pokemon anymore. I think it's still really good, but I think just other power creep Pokemon have kind of knocked this Pokemon down to A tier. It's by no fault of its own, and kind of same thing for Metagross. I think Metagross is still incredibly strong. It was a little bit of placebo effect because the Tyranitar be oh, Metagross isn't actually all that good because Tyranitar shred shields, and more people play Tyranitar, and Metagross is admittedly a very bad matchup for Tyranitar. Reverse that, Tyranitar is a very bad matchup for Metagross, and the fact that everyone was playing Tyranitar kind of did make it so it was not as good, but I do think Metagross is still incredibly strong and very worthy of A tier, and I think if it's play rate was higher or pick rate was higher, it would probably be considered S, but just not enough people play it to really put it up there. Crustle, I think you keep Crustle in A. Really good early game, good Unite move, Rock Tomb and Shell Smash are both playable. Good Pokemon. Meowscarada, it's fine. You could honestly talk me into B. I think Meowscarada is one of these weirdly super overhyped Pokemon that a ton of people play and enjoy. But I just never really see Meowscaradas popping off all that often. Sometimes, yeah, you'll get dominated by one, but I don't know. I also think it's a one-trick pony. I don't think Flower Trick is ever good. I've never seen on my team or against me, or I've never seen Flower Trick do well. It's only ever the Night Slash build that absolutely dominates my game. So I'm sure I've seen, people pop off on Flower Trick. I've seen screenshots. I've seen, other YouTube videos of people popping off on Flower Trick, but I personally have never seen it, so I'm a Flower Trick hater. I'm not really sure what that has to do with the tangent we're on, but yeah, I don't think Flower Trick's all that good. Moving on to Zoroark. Zoroark, it's a weird Pokemon. I think it's very strong. It's one of those Pokemon that requires the right pilot, though, because if you have, this thing with you, it's S tier. If you have a good Zoroark player, it's still very good. I think these good Zoroark players just keep it above a notch of the other speedsters, if you ask me, except for Leafeon, but we'll get to that guy. Eldegoss has kind of still basically the same Pokemon. A presses a lot, heals a lot, great Unite move. All of its moves are viable. Eldegoss, you could honestly talk me into S, but the same for all of these Pokemon. You can talk me into S for any of these 3 supports, but A, not enough people play them, and B, Comp is just simply better. So yeah, all 3 of these guys, great healers, all great Unite moves, still very good. Glaceon we already talked about. Desi, Spirit Shackle exists, plain and simple. This was like also put in A tier like right after the buff to Razor Leaf and Leaf Storm. Both moves are still pretty mid to terrible. Razor Leaf is awful. Don't play Razor Leaf unless you have like full Protective President. You can get away with running Leaf Storm, but I wouldn't recommend it. Gardevoir is still some of the highest damage in the game. Moonblast is still incredibly busted. Great Unite move that you have all the time, and it's very good. Cinderace, this is one of my hotter takes from the last tier list. I think Cinderace is incredibly slept on. I'm willing to move it down to B tier, but it's no fault of Cinderace. I just think, you know, it gets a bad rap because, of course, you know, you have your Cinderace one tricks that just like to sit in bushes and don't press the A button, but God, this Cinderace's A button hurt real good. Like, it's incredibly strong. Does have a good Unite move. It has really high outplay potential as well if you get good with the aiming Powerball, if you get good with redirecting yourself on Blaziken. Cinderace is super underrated, but I think B tier is a fine place for it. I was a little bit overhyped on Cinderace, but this character is better than a lot of people give it credit for. Dragapult, everything I said about Cinderace, but, you know, better A press, so goes a tier above, better secure as well with its Unite move. So yeah, Dragapult, presses A button, super good. A button good, A button broke. Espeon, it's an Eevee, it's broken passive, doesn't have to aim to do 1,000,000 damage, pretty good. Sylveon doesn't have to aim to do 1,000,000 damage and tank 1,000,000 damage, and has a good Unite move. It's an Eevee, it's broken. Yeah, this is what we're doing. Chandelure, really high damage output. You could talk me into B tier, but it has a pretty good early lane. I'm torn on this guy. I think I'm gonna move Chandelure down to B tier as well. I think it's a really good Pokemon. I just think they're better attackers than it in B tier, so that's the only reason I'm moving it down. The only thing bad about Chandelure, though, is its Unite move. Everything else is very solid about the Pokemon. All 4 combinations of its moves are playable, and it has really solid damage early, really solid damage throughout, has good crowd control with Imprison, and even, to a lesser extent, Poltergeist, and just a lot of raw damage. A lot of raw damage. I like Chandelure a lot. Buzzwole. I'm going to leave Buzzwole in A. Strong. The nerfs a while back didn't really hurt it. It affects its early game a little bit, but once you get late game, you're still mostly fine. You don't quite get the resets that you used to, but it's still a very strong Pokemon. It's still very capable of doing Buzzwole things. Still good CC. Still a lot of damage. Buzzwole's still good. Goodra, moving down to B tier. Fine Pokemon. Just don't fight it in a bush or in a 1v1 or, you know, in a 2v1 near a bush. Like, just don't face check a Goodra and you'll be fine. Fight it from range. Don't stand in Dragon Pulses. You'll be fine. Goodra's perfectly fine in B tier, in my opinion. Lapras, same thing. Lapras is a Pokemon that I think is severely slept on as well. It has a really low pick rate, if I'm remembering correctly. I think it's very low, but it's a Pokemon that's just better than it gets a lot of credit for. Now, obviously, we remember Lapras as being like very broken, like top of S tier, like one of the best Pokemon in the game for a while. And then it got nerfed and it kind of fell off in terms of popularity. And I think that's really the main thing about it. I think it's a perfectly fine Pokemon. It's just, it's not as good as it used to be. So people think it sucks, but it doesn't suck. So B tier. Talonflame. It's fine. I think Talonflame is the perfect definition of a mid character that can be elevated by good players, but not a lot of good players exist. So I'm going to leave it in B. I think it's good. It's very good. So yeah. Zeraora. I simply can't put Zeraora in C tier. I do think it's a step below Dodrio if we were to actually be ranking them against each other, but I think Zeraora has a couple of really good things going for it. I think it has a great Unite move. I think it has a pretty solid laning phase as well. If you do want to play it in lane, it's capable of doing that. And I think Discharge is incredibly good. Wild Charge is still broken. It's an invincibility move on a really low cooldown that can shred tanks. Like, yeah, Wild Charge is busted, but is what it is. Dodrio, yeah, it's the problem with Dodrio. I'm very tempted to move Dodrio down to C, but I can't in good conscience do it. The only thing wrong with Dodrio is the fact that literally everything in this tier, every single Pokemon that we've talked about, can counter Dodrio's Sprint Gauge and counter Dodrio's main gimmick with the single press of a button. Like, Umbreon basically just by existing. Not Magic Leaf that doesn't have to aim. Literally just its passive existing. Rock Tomb is very good against it. It literally stun lock the Pokemon. Okay, other speedsters, sure. Stun, stun, stun. Passive ignores its 2 main attacks. Range, okay, Desi, everything in the game can bully Desi. That's a bad example, but if Desi hits a Leaf Storm, Dodrio's dead, but that's a different story. Moonblast, outrunning it with Dragon Dance. Passive, too tanky, too tanky, too tanky. And then we're back to the speedster. But yeah, Dodrio, it gets countered by everything, but a good Dodrio player still dominate games, and that's the same sort of respect I'm giving Zoroark in A tier. I'll give Dodrio the same respect in B tier. Wiggly's a weird one, man. You get a lot of value out of seeing, but that's kind of all you get with Wigglytuff. Rollout is completely unplayable. Double Slap and Dazzling Gleam are both fine. It has a solid Unite move, but Umbreon does exist, so you have to make sure you're not playing against an Umbreon. And 90% of Wigglytuffs I see in solo queue just ult themselves anyway and don't realize how powerful of an ult Wigglytuff has. That's a fucking team cleanse and gives giant shields. Like, Wigglytuff ult is very good. It's just, it's very rarely used well. So, I don't know. Wigglytuff is fine. Can be a little bit better. It just has to compete with other defenders for its role, and I think there are better defenders. Already talked about these two guys. Cramorant, I'm tempted to move Cramorant up to A tier just because of raw damage, and I'm going to. I think Cramorant is performing very well. It got a good amount of play in NAIC as well, so you can chalk it up to a little bit of that. But yeah, incredibly solid damage, great Unite move, and the buffs to Hurricane and was it Air Slide? No, it was Dive. Buffs to Hurricane and Dive both feel great. Like, Cramorant, very playable, very good Pokemon. Easy A tier in my opinion. Pikachu, I'm gonna leave it in B tier just because it gets its Unite move all the time and has a ton of stuns on cooldown. You can talk me into C if you really want to, but I think, you know, just being able to stun things on such a low cooldown, have Unite move up all the time, I think Pikachu deserves B tier. It's not much higher than that. Like, it's probably, if I had to put another Pokemon in C tier, it would be Pika. But it feels a little bit wrong to have it down there. But at the same time, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. We're gonna go C tier for Pika. I'm sorry, Pika. You don't deserve that. Mew. Mew's a tough one because, again, good Mew players are still good with the Pokemon, but good Mew players only really play 5 stacks, and I don't have, like, frame of reference for that. Every now and then, I'll see a Mew pop off and do, like, 130,000 damage and just be unkillable, but those are very few and far between from the Mews that are level 10 going into Ray 5 because they can't get a kill and can't really farm all too well in the Pokemon, so I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm going to leave it in B tier, though. If you want to move it up, I'm not going to argue with you. Delphox is another one I would consider moving up, but it feels like there's a lot of attackers in A tier. Honestly, if I'm throwing my biases aside, like, we could do that, and that looks a little bit better. I think Delphox has a couple of things going for it that are very good. Obviously, raw damage. Fire Spin is still, like, very solid even after cooldown nerfs. Like, cooldown nerfs don't do anything, by the way. Like, that's spoiler alert. I'm just gonna spoiler alert. Cooldown nerfs don't do anything. Yeah, Delphox still good. Good Unite move. Raw damage is fine. So yeah. Oh boy. Not me double checking Trevenant's patch notes right now just to make sure. I shouldn't be doing that right now, but I already made the shit post, so I need to do it, and I can't fucking find it. Okay, it got a little bit of a damage nerf, but who cares? Trevenant's still busted. Where were we? We were on Dragonite. Dragonite, I think, is decent. Both of its moves are playable. Good jungler. Good secure, and secure is valuable, so I'll keep it in B. Azu is a tough one. You could talk me into moving that character down if you wanted to, but I think being a level 4 Eva with a really strong Unite move and Whirlpool and later off getting the buff a few patches ago with Muscle Bed, I think it's worthy of B if you ask me. All right, now it's time to talk about a massive glow up, and that is Phalanx going straight to S tier with a bullet. I'm honestly shocked. Like, I didn't really see it. I was kind of right all along about Ironhead being better, and now I'm glad that most people are realizing that. I had it in B tier because at the time, you know, obviously I'm not talking like the pro meta because they know what was going on, but the solo queue, like, sphere, everyone would probably have agreed that Megahorn was the better move until people realized how busted Ironhead was. And yeah, Ironhead is stupid. No retreat is stupid. That build specifically needs some big changes. You're just way too bulky and do way too much damage for, you know, what it is. And you have better mobility than you do on Megahorn. Megahorn's good, obviously, but yeah, just simply because of the existence of the Iron Head no retreat build, Phalanx gets S tier. Luke and Aegislash, I'm perfectly fine keeping both of those Pokemon in B. They are the definition of mid Pokemon that can carry games if you're good enough, but overall, they're not too great. All right, moving on to C tier, Snorlax. I'm gonna give Snorlax the benefit and move it up to B. No, I'm not. I can't. I really do want to move Snorlax up to B. I really do. I also want to move Mamoswine up to B because I think both of these characters are very good. But when you compare it to the absolute like survivability of Goodra and the fact that Lapras doesn't have to evolve, I don't know, man. It feels weird not having any defenders in C tier. But I honestly don't think any of these Pokemon are C tier. So yeah, I'm gonna move both of these Pokemon up. I think Snorlax has a lot going for it, and the fact that Heavy Slam can set up some really nice plays for you. The only problem with Snorlax is the fact that A, people play Flail for some reason, and B, you need your teammates to follow in on your engages, either that being Block or Heavy Slam, or hell, even Yawn. Like, Block and Yawn are two incredibly powerful abilities that if your teammates follow up with you, you're just going to do incredibly well. And then moving on to Mamoswine, it freezes everything. And, well, I have this character all the way up here. Mamoswine does it almost as well. It's just a melee attacker. That the only problem with this Pokemon, if Mamoswine evolved at 7, it would be S tier. But Mamoswine evolves at 9, so you're stuck as Piloswine for a little bit. But Piloswine is actually, honestly, better than a lot of Pokemon. Like, I would take a Piloswine all game over, like, most of these Pokemon. Like, specifically these 3 Pokemon, I would definitely take a Piloswine over literally all game. But, yeah, but Mamoswine's, I think, deserving of B. It's just, it's strong. When it gets going, it's, you know, very annoying to deal with, so I'll give Mamo B. Gengar. Oh, Gengar, you're a tough one, buddy. The only problem with this Pokemon, again, much like Mamoswine, is the fact that it evolves at level 9. And I keep seeing, like, it's weird sentiment. Like, I've had a couple of people mention it in my chat. I've seen other people mention it in other streamers' chats, namely Spraggles. I've seen him get it a couple times. Like, people really want Gengar buffs, but the problem with Gengar is you simply can't buff this Pokemon without breaking it, because Gengar, as it is, the damage it does is phenomenal. But the problem is, like, you are competing with characters that are good at level 4, that are stronger than you at level 4, that are as strong as you at level 9, and you're not evolved at level 9. Like, Leafeon gets his Unite move at level 8. You're still a Haunter. You just can't keep up. Like, but if you have Gengar evolve at 7, then all of a sudden we're in a meta that no one wants to play. Like, the game that would be all-time peak bad meta if Gengar evolved earlier. So you would have to significantly lower its damage, which would make the character worse. I don't know. Gengar's a tough one, man, because if you have a huge level lead and you're dominating, then yeah, you're gonna do well. But I don't know. There's not a whole lot you can do to change this Pokemon. It's a tough one to balance. Speedsters in general are like that. Because how many times have a Speedster got a small tweak and become, you know, the best Pokemon in the game? So you got to be very careful with it. I think C tier's fine, and it's literally just because it evolves at level 9. And then Greninja, excuse me. It A presses sometimes. It Unite moves sometimes. It backcaps all the times. So C tier, it's bad. Charizard is a weird one. I know a lot of people like Char, and it performs decently well, I would say. But it just doesn't do damage. Its damage just feels so low compared to everything else, except for, you know, the things below it, obviously. That being this, mostly. But yeah, Charizard's damage just isn't there. It has a good Unite move, obviously, but that's quite literally it in terms of the character. Like, none of its abilities feel impactful. Flamethrower's okay for the speed boost. Fire Blast is the most avoidable thing in the game. Fire Punch is one of the worst attacks in the entire game. And then Flare Blitz is decent, I guess, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of Char. But Champ, take everything I said about Gengar and make it, and Mamoswine, but make it less impactful. The only great thing about Machamp is it has decent mobility and a really good Unite move, but everything has good mobility and a good Unite move. And with the fact that everything up here is like super tanky or has the mobility to avoid Machamp Unite, I don't know. It doesn't really have a ton of value right now. Serena. I'm moving Serena up to B tier because I genuinely think it's every bit as good as Lucario and Aegislash in terms of damage, and has as good of tankiness. Evolves a level earlier than, you know, a couple of other Pokemon, and I just think Serena's good, so I'll give it B. Dark Bear, you can talk me into B for Dark Bear, but the only thing Dark Bear has going for it is a decent Unite move and a really good secure. That's literally it. Otherwise, the character is kind of whatever. It's very easy to avoid as well. Like, I've never once feared under Shifu ever since the nerfs. Like, oh, hey, cool, there's a Dark Bear on the other team. I might die to one wicked blow. I might get hit by one good wicked blow for the entire game. That's kind of where that Pokemon is, in my opinion. If you disagree, that's fine. Is what it is. And then we get to the ass of all ass. So we have Greedent, Sableye, and Water Bear. Man, Water Bear is a lot like Gengar in the fact that it's kind of hard to balance this Pokemon because it was another one that was, you know, up towards the top S tier broken Pokemon in the past, but every other all-arounder just seems to outperform it these days, especially with some of the crazy buffs they keep getting. So yeah, it has to stay down there. And the Greedent and Sableye are just the most useless Pokemon in the game. They don't provide any value to a team. Sableye does occasionally if the player is, you know, an elite Sableye. They can provide a little bit of stuns, but you need, like, you know, a top 10 player in the world on a Pokemon to be good. Like, I don't know, man. Sableye is useless. And then Greedent, all it does is back cap, so. And does no damage, does no defending, has no CC, really. Yeah, these Pokemon are bad. All right, let's move on to the others. So I didn't rank the EX Pokemon because they were banned in the last season. So let's go ahead and quickly throw these guys in. I think Zacian. Okay, if I had to rank them, we're going to start with Miraidon because I think Miraidon is the best of the bunch. And this is very weird for me to say, as when Miraidon released, I was the biggest hater of this Pokemon of all time. Because people are like, oh, Miraidon's the most broken thing they've ever put in the game. Completely ignoring Mewtwo Y literally exists, and Zacian being better at the time. Like, a million other Pokemon being better at the time. Like, Miraidon was not broken when it released. Like, okay, it was broken, but it wasn't like... I still stand by the fact that Miraidon release was nowhere near, like, the most broken thing. Like, it would be on, like, 10th on the list of most broken things in the history of Unite. Like, it's not that strong, in my opinion. But now, as it stands, I think Charge Beam is one of the best moves in the entire game. With the way a lot of bulky stuff plays, you can just outrange everything and do a crap ton of damage with Charge Beam. I think that move needs a little bit of a tweak. And yeah, there's that. If I had to go next, I would probably say Mewtwo Y and Zacian are both very good A tier Pokemon. You can put either one of these in S, obviously. I think Mewtwo Y, the fact that it exists and can still press the A button is obviously a very good thing. And it presses A button real good. Zacian, Sacred Sword exists. Metal Claw exists. But mostly Sacred Sword. Decent Unite move. Presses the A button good. And then I'm going to put Mewtwo Y in B. Again, if you were ranking all these Pokemon, you could probably realistically put them all in S tier. But if I'm ranking just the EX Pokemon against each other, this is how I would see it. I think Miraidon, Mewtwo Y, and Mewtwo Y and Zacian, and then Mewtwo X. I think that's like the order of EX Pokemon. But realistically, you know, you could put them all S tier if you really wanted to. But comparing them against each other, I think that's the order they're in. So there we go with that. Now we move on to the patch notes. We'll start with the order that it is listed on Unite DB. So first on Unite DB, they have Blaziken listed, which got a buff to its healing. So basically, whenever you switch moves with the Unite move, you get a big healing aura, and you heal a lot more now, which is pretty nice. Then they lowered the cooldown on Blaze Kick and Focus Blast. Blaziken, I had an A tier in the previous patch. I think this is probably worthy enough to move Blaziken into S. I think it's probably a safe assumption that most people would probably agree with, that Blaziken deserves to be an S tier. I'm not really so sure I agree. I don't really get dominated by this Pokemon too much compared to other all-arounders that we'll get to in a moment, but I think it's definitely in a great spot, and, you know, getting buffed to an already good Pokemon, I think we can go ahead and safely move it up. Next up, they have Duraludon. So Duraludon, okay, it was in D tier previously, and the changes to it overall are nice. I know there are some Duraludon mains out there that think they deleted the Pokemon from the game, which is absolutely an insane thing to say. But they did, you know, nerf a good bit about it. So you can't just brain dead flip array anymore. That was the only real value Duraludon provided. And the best buff that Duraludon got, aside from its Unite move, which I do think is actually really good, is to Flash Cannon. And look at everything here and tell me what Flash Cannon is good against. Oh wait, it's nothing. But you can talk me into putting Duraludon in C tier. I think the character just needs a complete rework, honestly. I don't know. It's not good. Like, you can buff it, you can change things about it, and it can still be ass. Like, it does damage. Like, Flash Cannon, admittedly, does really good raw damage. That is all it does. The second an all-arounder or a speedster gets near you and breathes on you, you're dead. You have no mobility. The change to Stealth Rock didn't really do anything. It needs to like be like an instant stun or something. I don't know how you make that move viable. You need to make the shields potentially like way better. That would be good. Like, I don't know. It needs something. You could talk me in to see if you really want to, but I think the character is just still overall ass, so I'm leaving it in D tier. Next up, we got Slowbro, which got a buff to Slack Off early game, so you heal more. And then it got a cooldown buff to Surf, reduced it by 1 second, and a buff to Scald that increases its attack reduction from 40% to 20%. Slowbro was in A tier previously. I'm moving it straight up to S tier. Back where Slowbro belongs is the rightful king of the defenders, which it was for so long in the history of this game. So having it back up there, I mean, you don't like to see it, but you do also kind of like to see it. I think Slowbro is really fun to play, and it got the hollow wear buff. So Blaziken also getting the battle pass buff, but Blaziken, I don't know, man. Cooldown buffs don't really do anything. It's the healing buff that really matters on Blaziken. But yeah, Slowbro, very good Pokemon. Obviously, I think we can bump that boy up to S tier. Next up, speaking of S tier Pokemon, we have Mimikyu. I had it in A tier previously. This character just never needed buffs. I got another hollow wear buff though. Like, it's a weird one, man. They really like buffing this Pokemon. So the healing on Shadow Claw got a 3% increase, which is nice. The slow on Play Rough got a buff. Didn't need that. And then Shadow Sneak got a cooldown buff. So I don't know. Yeah, Mimikyu didn't need buffs, and it got buffs to almost everything except for Trick Room, which, yeah, don't play that move ever. So yeah, Mimikyu S tier, easy. Miraidon, it allegedly got some nerfs. It got some nerfs to Electro Drift, which, cool. Charge Beam's better. Already talked about it. S tier. Okay. Tyranitar. Everyone's like, oh, Tyranitar is the most broken Pokemon in the game, guys. And then JB was like, nah, I think Tyranitar is honestly kind of B tier. And they did nerf it quite significantly to the point that it has like 30 less attack from level 10 on. It has like an average of 30 less attack all game, and it has like 20 less attack from 8 to 9. So, or no, from 9 to, okay, so yeah, okay, I'm reading the numbers wrong. I apologize. Ever since once Citauri evolves, it has like an average of 30 lower attack from level 9 to 15. So they did nerf its late game a little bit. They nerfed the Sandtomb damage by 10%. They nerfed Stone Edge in melee range by about 17% on the ratio, which I don't know what the numbers actually work out to there. They lowered it by 30 base damage. They lowered its damage at max range as well. They nerfed Stone Edge a lot, and they nerfed its Unite move. So yeah, it's B tier again. Like, or it's still B tier, I think. I don't think anything really changed. I think the character still needs level 9 to be good, and still loses to mages, and still loses to CC. So yeah, you can still brawl well. Like, you can still probably beat up a Trevenant a little bit, but I don't know, man. Like, how good was it really? You tell me. Tyranitar's B tier. I'm leaving it there. I just like rustling jimmies, you know. I said it at the beginning. Next up, we got my boy Garchomp, which got a buff to Tenacity, which literally no one knows what it does. If you look at UnitedDB, they literally they literally don't know what Tenacity does. If you, yeah, they have no clue what it actually means. So there's that. But I got a buff to Earthquake's damage. It got a buff to Dig damage, and I got a cooldown buff to Dragon Rush. I had Garchomp previously in the B tier, and these are nudges in the right direction. But overall, like, ground build is still just inferior to Dragon build, and Dragon build only got a slight cooldown buff. And I don't really notice any more like tankiness or lack of stunnage when I play this Pokemon. So I think I'm going to leave it B tier. You could talk me into A, but I think Garchomp is forever B tier, which honestly, I'm fine with it being B tier because for the longest time it was ass, but now it is not ass. It is just mid, and we like mid. Next up, we got Scizor and Scyther, which got cooldown nerfs to Swords Dance. I had them both in B tier last time. They're both staying in B tier. Cooldown nerfs 9 times out of 10 mean absolutely nothing, so that's where they're staying. Next up, we got Venusaur, which got a buff to Sludge Bomb, does more damage, and it reduces more special defense, and it slows more. I had Venusaur in S tier previously. It is staying in S tier. It has nothing to do with the Sludge Bomb buff, but the Sludge Bomb buff is sort of nice for the what's the name of the move? Solar Beam build, but Giga Drain's still really good on that build. Like Venusaur, yeah, it still has its Unite move. It still has Petal Dance, Giga Drain. It's still busted. I am going to, I promise, break out the Petal Dance Sludge Bomb for video soon. I need to do it. I've been trying to do it, but our games have been too sweaty for me to really try it lately. But next time I get a goof off game, I'm playing Sludge Bomb Petal Dance, just for the culture. We have Trevenant up next, which got a nerf to Woodhammer's cooldown, as well as a little bit of a damage nerf to both hits. Actually, wow, it got its ratio lowered by 48%. That's quite significant. So it doesn't scale as well off attack. I got a Horn Leech nerf to cooldown, and I got a Curse damage nerf by about 60 base damage, and the detonation got lowered by about half of its base damage. So overall, fine nerfs to the character. I don't think anything changes. It still has incredible sustain. It still has Pain Split. They didn't touch Pain Split, and honestly, that's the best part of its kit. Curse still resets the cooldown of Pain Split. It still can survive forever in fights. I don't think a lot changes with Trevenant, so it stays up in the S tier. Hoopa got some nerfs to Phantom Force. Trick Linked Return Recovery. So this was the Phantom Force Trick interaction. I guarantee you did not know that Hoopa could do this. So if you trick someone and then Phantom Force, they could take your Phantom Force and heal. No, like, name one solo queue Hoopa you've ever seen do that. No one knew that was a thing, but they did nerf it. Nerf its healing on that build specifically, which was only really a problem in tournaments. This build was kind of dominating tournaments, so that was a tournament nerf. I think it probably still belongs in A tier. Still a very good character, still has his Hoopa Unite, which is one of the most valuable things in the game, so we leave it in the A tier. Next up, we got Leafeon, which got a few nerfs to Chlorophyll. Its movement speed got reduced by 5%. Solar Blade's damage got nerfed at the first level charge. I guess that means before, like, your automatic. I'm not even gonna pretend to know what it means. It got a nerf to Solar Blade's damage, and yeah, that's Solar Blade. I mean, it doesn't secure as well. So I believe I had Leafeon in S tier last time. I think we could probably put it there. I think it's still the best speedster. So if you want to have a speedster in S tier, we could probably still leave Leafeon up there. So we'll do that. Just keeping it in order of roll. That's the word I'm looking for there. So yeah, we have Leafeon there. And then finally, we got our boy we missed Absol. How did I miss Absol? Absol got a damage to Pursuit when it hits in the front. And I also got a boost to Psycho Cut when it hits initially. I had Absol in B tier. It remains in B tier. You can talk me into A, but I think the character's still pretty mid. Can dominate well. Those buffs only really help good Absol players, so I'm going to leave it in B tier. And then finally, in terms of the patch, we have Mr. Mime, which got a pretty sizable buff to Power Swap. The movement speed increase got bumped up by 2%, and the healing got bumped up by 3. Base healing from 12 to 15, and then the ratio got bumped to 5%. I had mine previously in B tier. You can talk me into A tier, but the healing is only okay. The main draw of Mime is the stuns that it gets from its Unite move and Psychic/Confusion. It still, I feel like, feels mostly a defender role, but if you want to put it in A tier, I won't argue with you. I haven't really seen enough evidence of that, but it does feel like it feels a little bit more of a support role. I'll leave it in A tier. I'm not really gonna twist hairs on that one. And then finally, for the first time, I get to rank ceruledge on this channel. I didn't do a ceruledge release tier list because, well, reasons. So I'm a huge fan of ceruledge. I think it's one of the most fun Pokemon they've ever released. I really enjoy playing it, and I think it's honestly pretty solid. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I think that it competes well with other all-arounders. I honestly think it's, you know, extremely comparable to something like a Gengar or a Buzzwole in terms of sustain with its healing, really solid damage output, and an incredible Unite move. I'm a huge fan of ceruledge, and I think it's, you know, better than most of these guys. I think it does more damage than most of them, has better sustain than something like a Serena. Maybe not better sustain than a Garchomp. And the more I look at it, the more I want to move Garchomp up a tier. Just looking at the rest of these guys and comparing them all to Garchomp, I think Garchomp just outdamages most of them. But I'm gonna leave ceruledge in A. And, oh god, how did that happen? But yeah, there's the tier list. I think overall, good patch. I think the game is in a decent spot right now. I don't think anything's too turbo broken. So, if I had to put a Pokemon in the God tier, what would it be? Besides the shitpost Comfey, probably Phalanx or Mimikyu. I mean, the base answer is Ninetales. Slowbro maybe. I don't know. You guys let me know what you think the best Pokemon in the game is currently and what you agree or disagree with on in this tier list, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.